Hello and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where the hits just keep on coming has taken on a very different meaning for Kathleen Kennedy. Yes, as we discussed last week, in the past, Kennedy has been able to silence her detractors with her impressive box office numbers. But in just weekend two, with Solo, she's even fallen behind the DCEU. To Transformers level. Oh my God! Or we're doing it! Which has become many fans, or rebels as they're now calling themselves, that's adorable by the way, rallying cry. But will life imitate Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars, where the rebels never freaking win? It's so frustrating. But you guys, that's one of the problems you have with this franchise. So maybe you can force a course correction. And speaking of forcing a course correction, you're clearly trying to reach above Kathleen Kennedy at this point too. Alan Horn and of course Bob Iger, who runs all of Disney. And we all know that Bob Iger's pet project these days, and what's going to secure his legacy, is the potential Disney-Fox deal. And as I discussed in my breakdown on Friday about the Disney-Fox-Comcast situation, stock is very important to Disney winning the day here. And with Solo being DOA, along with the Roseanne cancellation, well, Disney stock has been hurt, right again in the middle of negotiations for Fox. Where part of the deal, their offer for Fox includes stock. It was going to be all stock until Comcast made an all-cash offer, and now Disney has revised its offer to be a combination of the two. But that stock keeps dropping. You guys are doing a good job. So unless Disney wants to potentially lose Fox and have a really awkward 2019, I mean, can you imagine Star Wars Celebration if things remain unchanged, bringing this fan base together with the higher ups at who at Lucasfilm's going to show up for this thing, right? And then also Galaxy's Edge is opening on both coasts in 2019, and if it doesn't open to a massive crowd, yowza! Disney should really announce in the next week or two some sort of patch job, at least. Again, the obvious solution of bringing on Dave Filoni as Kathleen Kennedy's lieutenant, who should immediately greenlight a kick-ass Obi-Wan Jedi extravaganza, perhaps co-starring an older Ahsoka. It all seems so obvious, and yet it's not happening. By the way, speaking of obvious, I thought about it, and I don't think Filoni will ever entirely replace Kathleen Kennedy. Why? Well, he doesn't have the experience to run a live-action franchise from the business side of things. He's only done animated shows. And also never anything of this scope. Kathleen Kennedy oversees all of Star Wars. Now, some of you, and by the way, some of you might be like, I believe Dave Filoni could do it, right? Well, Disney's not even going to let him try. It's just too risky. Now, you also might be saying, well, Kevin Feige is just one man, Grace, and he handles Marvel all by his lonesome. Well, Marvel grew into something big, and Feige was able to learn and prove himself as it grew. However, Filoni would be leaping into the deep end. And Disney, again, has shareholders that it has to, make happy, and has just too much relying on Star Wars at this point. Also, Feige has the benefit of being like the George Lucas of Marvel. He started it all, although things obviously, well, you never say never. You never know what horrible turn things could take. Feige's like, don't jinx me. But still, he started it all. But Filoni was not have that distinction with Star Wars. So I think that what could happen is that he could stay as like the left brain, the creative part of the partnership, and they would bring in another Disney executive or someone from outside to be the right brain side. Or a more apt Disney metaphor, a Walt and Roy, which worked out pretty darn good. No one ever talks about Roy. If you're like, who the heck is this Roy you're talking about, Grace? Well, then you need to look into the history of the Disney studio, because Walt was the creative and Roy ran all the business things to make sure that Walt could continue to be creative. They fought, but Walt fought with everybody. All right, so anyway, he'd probably be like, what the hell, Kathleen Kennedy? Although I don't know how Walt would feel about all the brands they've acquired. I think, being a very Well, I think he earned it, but he was, he had a bit of an ego. I think he would feel that it would dilute his own brand and his identity in many ways just way too much. So what was I saying about Transformers? I'm sure those of you who are looking for Kathleen Kennedy to go are like, get back to that, Grace. Get back to this Transformers comparison. It's even better than the DCEU one. Well, anyway, Solo's second weekend drop is in the mid-60s, maybe even high 60s when the final numbers come in. Could be. It could even have a 7 in it. But dare we dream? Anyway, Justice League, it only dropped in the mid-50s in its second weekend. And again, they opened on par. But Transformers 5 was like an even, like if these things remain unchanged, I see a Transformers 5 in Star Wars' future. But anyway, with Transformers 4, when things were just starting to fall apart, its second weekend, it fell in the low 60s. But it did open bigger than Solo, and thus had a bigger total haul 2 weekends in anyway. Point is, though, this is not great company for a franchise to be keeping. And to make matters even worse, both those clunkers saved significant face thanks to strong overseas revenue. However, as I'm sure you can believe, Solo is doing even worse overseas. Now, last week, and many of you have been tweeting me about this, and I've said I doubt that Solo could match Justice League's global total. It would be lucky to match it. But at this rate, I think it'd be lucky to match the global totals of the original trilogy, not adjusted for inflation. Oh boy, I'm sure if you were like, I never dreamed we'd be this successful. Now, no way Episode 9 will crash and burn this hard. There's just too many people who are invested in that story, as much as they hate, to admit it. But Disney would be beyond stupid not to be worried and not to do anything, and Bob Iger ain't stupid. So I think something's going to happen. The only question is when and what, but they have to do something. Now, as for the other 2 big movies in the frame, Deadpool 2 will clearly, by the way, I'm just nagging at me. Disney really hates to admit when they do anything wrong. I think that Warner Brothers doesn't have that track record, so they were able to be like, this is a disaster with the DCEU. But Disney, they're very, and I don't blame them. They really try and keep a strong front. But I just think this is just too bad, and it's not only not getting better, but it's not even holding steady. It's getting worse. They have to really stop the Star Wars bleeding, particularly because it makes up such a big chunk of the company's portfolio. Not just as is, but they're trying to build it into something even bigger. They don't want it to become ESPN, right? Over there. Okay. All right. So anyway, back to the other 2 big movies in the frame. Deadpool 2 will clearly not match the first film's total haul domestically or globally, while Avengers Infinity War continues to try and inch its way to the 2 billion mark. It's so close. Will it get there? Speaking of not giving up, Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin have both been working for a long time, but neither has been able to break through box office-wise or awards-wise. I mean, I know Shailene Woodley had the Divergent series, but it was never like Hunger Games or anything like that. And Sam Claflin, of course, was in Hunger Games, but, not even like secondary, roster of characters, like third roster. But they both had a nice small victory this weekend with Adrift, which opened respectfully in 3rd place. And speaking of career trajectories, Johnny Knoxville wasn't able to reverse his with Action Point. But the real tragedy of the weekend, I'm so sad about this, was Upgrade. A spectacular film, I saw it on Saturday night, that had an unspectacular debut. Now, the low-budget sci-fi thriller was made for just $3 to $5 million. And if you've seen this movie, you would realize how insane it is that they were able to make the film look like it is for that little money. I mean, I think other studios and television production companies should be ashamed that this movie looks so good for that amount of money. Also, Netflix, by the way, this looks better than Altered Carbon. It's just ridiculous. But it's ridiculous with how little it opened with. It only made back its budget, and of course you don't get 100% of your box office. So it still has a little ways to go before it even becomes profitable. We're not even talking about how much they spent on advertising, which wasn't much. Because look, Jason Blum, he should be, he not only produced this film, but he distributed it, right? I don't know why he chose to do that. I mean, I can't imagine that no other studio was willing to pick this thing up. Or at least Netflix. At least maybe then people would have given it a go. More people would have tried it out. But anyway, he always brags about how cheap his films are to make. And he should. They look spectacular. He gets a lot for a little. But he should be embarrassed by how little money he spends to advertise them. Per usual, his distribution arm, BH Tilt, only spent about $15 million on advertising, which is like nothing in the movie advertising game. And almost all of it went to the digital space, and almost all of it was aimed at male audiences, which I find a little insulting because there are plenty of female sci-fi fans. Now, those of us that did see the film, I'll review it this coming week. With half the review will actually be spoilers because I'm late to the party. But we felt it played a lot like Venom, but Venom would be lucky to be this good. And therefore, this makes this a painful lesson on how important a movie star is, or at least a known talent like A Quiet Place, right? having a big studio, which A Quiet Place also had, by the way, and then also an established property. A Quiet Place didn't have that, but, it's obviously A Quiet Place and Venom are, coming from different places, but still, they're both going to do a lot better than Upgrade, and it just goes to show how important those things are to getting people to see a movie these days. Again, they should have released it on Netflix, so then we're going to make more of an effort to get people to see it in theaters. And you know what else I want to know? Where art thou, MoviePass? Are you supposed to be saving films just like this? Isn't this your whole supposed reason for being? I know you're having a lot of your own problems, but you got to keep your eye on the ball. And I think this was a major missed opportunity for MoviePass. And also maybe Jason Blum should be like, heck, maybe I should reach out to MoviePass myself, and I should have, promoted through the app or something like that, because this is such a great movie. To not work harder to make sure people see it is appalling. Okay, it just goes to show, as Netflix greenlights so much content and Jason Blum is so prolific, and a lot of talent gravitates towards these avenues because there's more of a likelihood that they'll say yes to your project. But what are you getting? What are you getting for that yes? Are they going to promote it at all? Because, I think a lot of good content like Ozark is going completely unseen because just these avenues are not advertising the content properly. So frustrating. Now, as for the rest of the top 10, Book Club, well, I can't even be frustrated about this because it's just so crazy, but it continues to be the surprise winner, surpassing Life of the Party, Breaking In, and Overboard, even though it was the last of those movies to open. Wow. Again, I think this really points out this, older women is an underserved audience, and they really need to get on that. Now, speaking of women, as for this coming weekend, well, what do you know? Ocean's 8 is expected to open on par with Ghostbusters. If I were Warner Brothers, I'd put a press release out and I'd be like, nobody mentioned that. I don't want Ghostbusters mentioned anywhere in the same sentence or even the same article as Ocean's 8. Because let's hope that Ocean's 8 has a happier ending. The embargo, I've seen the movie, the embargo lifts Tuesday night at midnight. I don't think they're going to change the embargo. But I will tell you that I don't think it's a perfect film, and it actually does have some of the same problems as Ghostbusters, but it's much better than Ghostbusters. I think it's a definite improvement, and I hope the film does well. But it's going to have some competition because smaller flicks, Hotel Artemis and Hereditary, are also not only just opening, but they're opening wide, which is pretty impressive considering the fact they're coming from such small distributors. But they're going for it, again, giving these ladies some genuine competition. And hopefully, people will circle back and check out Upgrade because it deserves it. I've yet to see Hotel Artemis. I'm seeing that actually Monday night, but Upgrade, I think so far of the film between Ocean's 8 and Hereditary, it's the superior film. Go see Upgrade. All right, so that's this week's Movie Math. Thanks for going over the box office with me. I look forward to hearing your own thoughts down below, including your thoughts on Upgrade if you saw it and what you plan to see this coming weekend. And of course, I'm sure you have plenty to say about Star Wars. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.